Welcome to the 2013 2A Vectorworks course. I'm your lecturer, James Russell. Hopefully some of you are familiar with Vectorworks and have a basic understanding of some of the principles involved. If not, that's okay. Over the next 6-ish videos we're going to cover everything from the start. An introduction to the Vectorworks layout, 2D and 3D tools, navigation, layering, presentation skills, just to name a few things. Each of these videos will contain exercises. I would encourage you to pause the video when instructed and have a go at completing them, either in the lab or at home. Before proceeding any further, there's one piece of housekeeping that I like to keep in mind. As you're watching this YouTube series, it's important to make sure that you're watching it in high definition. It's recorded in high definition so you can see important pieces of text or numbers as they appear on the screen. You can change your quality settings by clicking the cog in the bottom right hand corner and selecting 1080p or 720p from the list. This will improve your visual experience, but it'll also make it a lot easier to follow along with some of the things that I'm doing. It will take a lot longer to load, but it's worth it in the end. As you're loading into Vectorworks, it gives me a great opportunity to tell you more about myself. I've been teaching variations of this course for the last 5 years at VCAM, the Victorian College of the Arts and Music, the faculty of Melbourne University, as most of you probably know, primarily for designers but also for lighting students. During all of this time, I keep active within the entertainment industry. I draft regularly for construction and theatrical purposes, I follow festival tours as a technician, occasional set constructions, and a lot of computer maintenance. I try and remain approachable at all times, not only whilst you're an academic, but beyond that as well. Write down my details from here, and don't hesitate to be inquisitive. At some points you might notice a difference between what you're seeing on my screen and what you might be seeing on your screen. The primary difference that you might have is that I'm working on the Windows client of Vectorworks, whereas you might be working on the Macintosh version. In this instance, most of the time you can replace anything that I say that involves the Control key with your Apple key. If you're unsure at any point in time, feel free to either ask me or have a look at the keyboard shortcuts. For example, if you drop down any menu, next to it will say the appropriate keys to press when you want to achieve that function. For example, new for me will be Control N. For you guys it will be Apple N. Now that you're fully loaded in, there might be some boxes or dialogue things that you don't need on the screen at this current point in time, and mightn't for a few lessons. I'm going to tell you at the start of each lesson what palettes you should have open and what modes you should be in. So for this lesson, the only thing that you really need is this, the basic toolset. Everything else can be closed. It's handy to have your attributes and your snapping dialogue open, but they're not essential at this point in time. So if you have things like the navigation window, the visualization window, or your resource browser open, feel free to close them. The next thing you'll be confronted by is this, the Vectorworks page. This is probably one of the features that I have the biggest issues with, and I've had several discussions with students and teachers alike about this. Vectorworks is a design package. Therefore, I would prefer it if we designed first and then put on paper later. We shouldn't be limiting our imagination by the idea of a page to begin with. There is a separate mode in Vectorworks which is designed for pages, so therefore this area should just be free to draw whatever you like. We're going to make it that now. I want you to go to your File menu, go down to Page Setup. There's an option here called Show the Page Boundary. It will be important later on down the track, but for right now just de-check this box and hit OK. What essentially this does is take our grid pattern and make it infinite. No matter how far out, nor how far in I zoom in, it's not going to restrain me. I can do whatever I want now within this infinite space, as it should be. Now that we're playing within an infinite space, there's one thing that I'd like to know, which is where do we fit within that? And to do that we need some sort of scale or unit of measurement. I've already got mine set up for here, but we're going to go through together how you set up for units of scale. From your File menu, go down to the Document Settings, and from there choose Units. There's a lot of data contained within this dialog box, but there's only a few important parts that you need to know. For those of us in Australia, from about 1970 onwards, we've been using the metric system. From here you can choose anything that you prefer, millimeters, centimeters, or meters, kilometers if you have to go that far. As a preference, I'll choose millimeters. It's most commonly used for the things that you'll be needing, set construction, finer details, that kind of thing. You can also choose a unit. I prefer square meters. And you can also choose a volume. Cubic meters for me, it's up to you, entirely for you. If you're in America or the United Kingdom, you can use your feet and inches, or your yards if you choose. There's also a precision setting here, and it is rather important. For most of the things we'll be doing, you can leave it on a decimal precision of 1, which means it won't go to a decimal place. If you're working on something smaller, for example, a small Lego project that might come up in the future, you might need to go down to 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places, depending on how you're feeling. There's also angular data here. Should you need it, you can go into radians as well. Before we proceed on to fun things such as rectangles, there's one more piece of housekeeping. Now that you've changed your scale, you probably need to change your grid lines. They'll be defaulted to whatever they were before. It's really easy to do this, but you need one little window open. It's called the snapping window. If at any point in time you don't have a window open, just go to the Windows menu, go down to Palettes, and choose the appropriate one here. For me, it'll be snapping. You can also try and remember these shortcut keys, but no one really does. Double click on the Snap to Grid button, which will be in the top left hand corner with a grid. It'll bring up this dialog box here, listing 2 different grids. The first one, on the right hand side, is the reference grid. That's probably the dark blue lines that you're seeing on the screen right now. There's also a smaller grid within that called the Snap grid. And essentially when snapping is on, that's the snap grid that it's snapping to. In here you can see I've got it set to 3 and 3 because it's on symmetrical mode. That means that the smallest rectangle I can possibly draw is going to be 3 by 3. I like to be a bit finer, so I'm only going to choose 1 and 1. Obviously, if you're going larger or smaller scales than that, you might choose a different snap grid. For example, if you're working on an outside garden landscape or a freeway, you'd be working at a scale of kilometers. So therefore your snap grid probably isn't going to be millimeters, it's going to be closer to meters or even something larger. Much the same, the reference grid can be adjusted just the same. In this case, I'm going to choose 50 millimeters as my reference grid. Hit OK, and you can see that it's adjusted to my ruler up the top and to the ruler on the side. Make sure when you finish that you set your settings back. I prefer to have the snap to grid settings off, and I turn it on when I need it to.
That's it on the settings front. For the next part of this lesson, let's move on to the basic toolset. It's normally located up in the top left hand corner of your screen, giving you easy access to all the kind of 2D building blocks and the handy tools that you might need to jump between. The first one you normally start off with in any project is the cursor tool, and it's selected by default. You can press the X key or just click on it, it's up to you, but it's really good to know that the X shortcut is there to jump in and out of using different tools and then coming back to move them with the cursor. It has 3 different modes up the top. There isn't a great deal of difference between the single object interactive scaling and the unrestricted interactive scaling, but the trick for new players is this first icon here where there's disabled interactive scaling mode. I'm just going to quickly draw a rectangle and show you what I mean. With the cursor tool selected, you can see I get these little blue handles around an object, and this is common on all of the interactive objects. It means you can grab the corner and resize the object in any way you choose. What happens when you click this little marker here, and you'll get a warning box about it, it says that you're disabling interactive scaling mode for the tool, which means that you no longer get these handy little corners, you can only move the object around, and that's about it. Now if you've jumped on someone else's workstation and for some reason they might have this selected, it could take you ages to find out what's going on. All you've got to do is click this little button here and it'll bring back your little blue handles. It's that simple. Slightly further along with the cursor tool, there's 3 different selection criteria you can use. The standard one here highlighted is the rectangular marquee mode, and probably you won't actually ever change from this mode. It's just a basic rectangle, whatever's inside the rectangle will be highlighted and selected. The second one is the lasso mode, more like a freehand style. If you want to draw kind of a shape around a couple of objects, you can do it like this. And the last one is the polygon lasso, and essentially this is point-to-point selection. If you need to just draw a bounding box around a series of objects, but want to exclude some other objects, you can do it this way. That's about it for the cursor tool. Let's move on. The next tool in this series is the pan tool. Now some people like to click it and use it to move around the page. As you can see, it's a single click and then move the page around. You can zoom in and out as I'm doing here with the scroll wheel, and you can see it even better. There's a handier shortcut than this, which is why I never really click this icon. It's normally when you've got your cursor selected, or any other tool in fact, just hold down the spacebar and it'll bring the hand up temporarily. Then you can move your page around, let go of spacebar, and you're back to whichever tool you had. In this instance, I've still got a rectangle. I've drawn a rectangle. I can hold down spacebar, move the page, let go of spacebar, and continue drawing rectangles. It's that easy. The third one along here is the flyover tool. We're going to jump over this because it's covered in the 3D lesson coming up. It's only used in 3D and there is no 2D purpose to it. The next one along is the zoom tool. It has two functions up the top here. The first is marquee mode and the second is interactive mode. What I'm going to show you here is the difference between the two. Quickly, I've just drawn a few objects here on the page. The two different modes work like this. The first one, of marquee mode, essentially means that I can draw a marquee or a box around a series of objects, and when I let go it will scale the best it can to fit those objects to the page. The second mode is more like a scroll in, scroll out mode with the up and down movements of the mouse, whereas if I hold and move my mouse upwards I'll zoom in, and if I pull out I'll actually zoom out. Once again, when you've actually got a mouse connected, you can just use your scroll wheel, which I find much easier to do this. A common question is, how do I zoom out from a marquee when I've got it selected? And you can just find the commonly used shortcut key of Alt, which will allow you to make a marquee and zoom out from that marquee proportionally. Now we find ourselves at the text tool. It doesn't have a lot of options here, but it does have a lot of properties after it's been drawn. So let's just make one. In this instance I'm going to use the first option and just start typing something. Enter will give you a new line in this instance. Pressing escape will seal the box temporarily so you can use it like an object. I've just pressed escape there, and now I can pick it up with my cursor and move it around with my handy handles. Now if you have a look over here on the sidebar at the object info pane, you can notice there's a lot of information in here. Some of it we're going to cover now, some of it we're going to leave for future lessons. There's a few pieces of information here that we need to focus on. Mainly it starts off right here at the X value. Although these three are relevant, we'll come back to them much later on in about lesson 2 or 3. The X and Y coordinate system is something that you might be familiar with, probably from around your year 8 math where you started doing graphs. And it works like this. An X value is simply an across value. Starting at the ruler here, you've got positive numbers going this way and negative numbers going to your left. Essentially, this is telling us that the corner of this box, where this little X is here, is sitting at negative 44x, which means backwards negative 44 points. It also tells us that the Y value is 57, which means from the 0 marker here, it's up 57. This is really good when you need to move something in a specific direction to a specific location. For example, if I want to move this so the top corner is on the 0, 0 marker, I would simply type in 0 and press enter, which has now moved to the 0 in the X, and then go to the second box, type 0 and press enter again. Now I'm guaranteed that that top left hand corner is sitting on the 0, 0 marker. We'll come back and do another little section on this when we get to rectangles. Width of the box is kind of self-explanatory. How wide is it? This can be a specified function, which means if I tell this to be 25, it will restrict the box, and because I have the wrap text function enabled, it will wrap the text around. If I had that dechecked, it would ignore the width component and make it whatever size the text has to be. Rotation, self-explanatory. Put in a value in here, for example 45 degrees, and I should end up with 45 degrees text. A really handy function coming from 2012 and 2013 is that when you alter diagonal text, it actually enables you to edit it in the current orientation it's in, which is fantastic, or hit the little button on the side, which will bring it around to the orientation that makes it easy to read. It's a handy little function that they've just added in. Pressing escape again, I'm back out here editing my object. Tight fill is an interesting one, and I'm going to show it off here by restraining my width back down to 25. Also going to bring this back around to 0 just so we can read it. You'll notice here that it's made it a solid block. If you don't want to see the white space behind your text here, you can check the tight fill function and it will actually make that into a transparent gap. Although you can't see it at the moment, we will come back to it later on. The rest of the stuff following down from here is simple Microsoft Wordy kind of stuff. Text styles, if you saved a few, you can put them in here. We'll come back to stylings later on. Font, size, bold, italic, underline, all simple things, and of course your horizontal, vertical alignment and spacing, all things that you've probably come across before. I'm just going to delete this box and show you the other two functions of the text tool, primarily being the rotated mode, which allows us to draw a line that our text should follow. For example, if we wanted to start out on a 45-degree line, I could start typing straight in here, and there we go, I've done a 45-degree text box. And this little check here is simply to enable type fill mode on or off by default. That's the text tool right there. The callout tool is a very similar tool to the text tool, just simply adding a line to the end of it. Grabbing the callout tool, you can see I place the marker box and then draw an extension line here and click again. It'll ask me to type something in. I've previously typed something, which sounds great, so I'm going to click OK. You can see what it's done here is given us a leader line with an arrow on it, and then it's given us a text box on the end. Simply double click to start typing in the callout manager again, and then hit OK or cancel depending on what you choose. There are a lot of options in the sidebar here, and a lot of them will just make sense instantly, such as rotating text, the width of the text, its position, etc, etc. Once you get to bubbling, it's very interesting, and this is what's going to make some of your design presentations really neat. Drop down the bubble style and have a look at what's here. For example, if I want to put a rounded rectangle around this, you can see instantly I've just defined this on my space. There's a lot of other options here to do with how the rectangles are formed, whether it's a circle, whether you're using a custom object, all that kind of thing, which we won't discuss now but will later. I'll just quickly show you the other functions of the callout tool. Here we've got two different mode types, which is essentially drawing modes. As you saw with the first one, I placed the box down first and then drew the leader line. It options here for the callout and then click OK. This is just the reverse styling, which means you set down the arrowhead first and then put the callout somewhere wherever you'd like it. For example, I'll put it here, same thing in the callout manager, and click OK. It's just a directional thing and what's easiest to draft for you. Once I remove these, I can show you the other two options. Here you can see that I can either draw it in 2-point mode or 3-point mode. As you'd imagine, it's quite self-explanatory. Place the box, do I just draw the leader line? Or do I place the box, draw the extension line, then draw the leader line? Once again, it's whatever's applicable to you, and you'll have a lot of time to explore this. This is the first time we really get to see this, the pencil and spanner. And this is something that you'll get quite familiar with when you get really down deep into Vectorworks. The pencil and spanner means there's more information to show you here, but I can't show it in this tiny little bar, so click me and find out what's there. We're going to click it now, and it will have a lot of similar data to what we see over here on the sidebar. As you can see, there's a couple of text options, and then there's a whole heap of stuff about the bubble and the leader type. You can play with all of these, set it up as a default, and then hit OK. Moving right along, we've got the locus tool. I'm not really going to explore this right now because the properties is pretty simple. Place it on the page and use it. We don't have a function for it right now, but I will show you a function for it later on when we get into 3D types. Symbol insertion is something that we will discuss, but we'll mainly get to it when we start putting items like furniture, sinks, cloths into our drawings. It's not really appropriate right now because we haven't got the technology to make symbols yet. Moving along, we find the line tool and the double line tool. These two are pretty similar, so we'll just discuss the line tool itself. Although I discourage this, it is actually a very handy tool to use, whether you're using it for reference markers or measuring something or anything really you can do with it. We're going to start off just here by drawing a line, which is clicking once, clicking twice, line is complete. The properties over here on the right hand side show us the change in X and the change in Y. Notice these symbols here, sometimes indicated by delta, which is a small triangle, or this, the plus and the minus, meaning change of. This means essentially that there's been a change in the X value of 96, thus meaning it's 96 long, and a change in the Y value up and down of 0, meaning we haven't gone anywhere. Also notice here, we've got this little segment position button, and that's essentially telling us where this X coordinate, notice no change, which means they are an actual X and Y coordinate. So it's saying it's at -36 and 22, but from this point here, which is this point right here. And as I change this, you can see the middle is actually at X13, and the far right hand side is at 61. Once again, we'll get right down into this when we get to rectangles. There is also a radial mode here if you'd like to use that to quickly explain the difference between these two. This one here is a simple kind of across and up approach. So if I change the Y value here to 10 for example, you can see that we're moving across 96 and up 10. In this mode here, it changes a little bit. It's just a length and a direction. So in this case, the length of the line, in this instance, is 97, and it's on an upwards degree of 174 degrees, which means from this point here, probably up to here, it's 174 degrees, or vice versa, depending on where you look at it. You can experiment with that on your own. Coming back here to the line tool, there's one other option, which is center mode, which you will probably never use, but it allows you to draw from the center of this object out equally on both sides. As I said before, the double line tool, quite similar to the single line tool in its kind of click and draw approach. There's just a few other added bonuses here, mainly the separation value, in this case 25mm, and also the draw style. Are you drawing it from the top of the line, meaning the upmost line I guess you could say, the center in between the two lines, from the bottom line, or from a custom control line, which means you can set a particular value you might want the offset to be. I'm going to leave all that because no one's really going to ever use it. I'm going to move right along to my favorite tool, the rectangle tool. This is where you're primarily going to spend most of your time, and I guarantee for the next part of this lesson you're going to love the rectangle tool as much as I do. Firstly, grab the rectangle tool. There's 4 options up the top. I'm going to draw one of each type, so you better pay attention. The first one is corner to corner. One click in this corner, one click in this corner. Rectangle complete. Second one, center point to the outermost extreme. Center point, outermost extreme, rectangle complete. This one here, the midpoint to corner mode. Now, pay attention because there's 2 variations here. You can either draw like this, meaning from the bottom point out, or you can hold down your Alt key and draw to the side of the midpoint. Notice up here there's also a cool couple of other things here. You can hold your Shift key down to draw a square, or you can hold the Shift and Control key down to draw a golden rectangle.
Mathematical discoveries. Only members were allowed to attend. They had a secret emblem, the pentagram.
Well, I'll be a password.
It was our old friend Pythagoras who discovered that the pentagram was full of mathemagic. The 2 shorter lines combined exactly equal the third, and this line shows the magic proportions of the famous golden section. The second and third lines exactly equal the fourth. Once again we have the golden section. But this is only the beginning. Hidden within the pentagram is a secret for creating a golden rectangle, which the Greeks admired for its beautiful proportions and magic qualities. The star contains the golden rectangle many times over. It's a most remarkable shape. It can mathematically reproduce itself indefinitely. All these rectangles have exactly the same proportions. This figure also contains a magic spiral that repeats the proportions of the golden section into infinity. To the Greeks, the golden rectangle represented a mathematical law of beauty. We find it in classical architecture. The Parthenon, perhaps one of the most famous of early Greek buildings, contains many golden rectangles. this ideal proportion is to be found in life itself.
Good. This is mathematics. I got mathematical figures like that.
Donald.
Let me try it.
No.
Ideal proportion.
Not quite. No, I'm afraid not. Well, we can't all be mathematically perfect.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I knew I could do it.
Gah. Sorry, I don't know what happened then. Let's proceed. Getting rid of these, we'll move on to our final rectangle, which is probably my favourite rectangle out of all of these. It's the 3-point rotated mode, which means you can draw it the same as a standard rectangle except with 3 clicks. First click defines the corner, second click does a leader line, third click defines the height. But to show you this again, first click, second click, third click. This enables you to draw quite a lot of shapes, and you can also build shapes out of it. For example, here if I choose a 45-degree angle and draw this rectangle, and then draw another rectangle on a similar 45-degree angle, you'll notice that you can start making triangles out of just rectangles. So there's some hidden special things about rectangles that we should really know about. Firstly, let's look at their properties over here in the sidebar. I'm going to expand this one a little bit, have a look at this, and then discuss some special things about rectangles and how they apply to other tools. Mainly I want you to look over on this side here, a similar width and height function, which also could have been called delta x delta y, or plus and minus x plus and minus y. Just think of those as interchangeable as width and height, depending on where you're looking at things from. Obviously changing the width here, for example 100, will make a change here. An important thing to note though is this little diagram here. You can see it's got width and height already written on it, and I've got the top left hand corner selected. That means that any changes I make here to width and height, there's a pin through the top left hand corner, which means these changes cannot affect this pin in the top left hand corner. Let me show you again as I change this width back to 50. This corner here won't move, as you can see here. Similarly, if I change this now to say the opposing corner and change the height, it won't shrink the bottom up, it will shrink the top down. So showing you here, height, cut that in half-ish, and there you go, it didn't move the bottom corner. Obviously then, the logical thing to do would be to put it on the center, change this width again to say 25, and it should shrink on both sides proportionally. Another important thing to notice here is you can put math into this. For those of you who kind of ditched math and decided to follow the art stream, it's okay, I forgive you, it's alright. For those of you who did math all the way up to specialist, congratulations, you won't actually use any of that now. In here you can just type in a plus, or a minus, or a times symbol, or a divide symbol, and do some math inside here. Say for example if I want to add 10 to both sides, I can just type in 10 plus 10, having the center selected, and all of a sudden I've got 10 on both sides. If I want to make this half the size, divide by 2. Gets pretty simple from there. If I wanted to times by 2.2 in here. Excellent. Finally, to do with our rectangles, there's a little bit more information down here. Mainly a ratio to sides, a perimeter value, and an area value. Of course, you probably won't think of this later on down the track, but if you ever need to measure the area of something, or the perimeter of something, you can always draw a rectangle or a similar object around your surface and find out the area or perimeter really easily. These values here translate across to circles, polygons, any kind of 2D shape, and some 3D shapes as well. I'm going to get rid of this and do one more thing with my rectangles. As you can see here, I've currently got my grid, and here's the 0 marker in the X and here's the 0 marker in the Y, which means this point here is 0, 0. What I'm going to do is double click on my rectangle, and it brings up this handy little dialog box. Double clicking on most of these functions will bring up this kind of create object box, in particular all the ones that actually create something. In here you can set a specified width and height and then a placement of the object before you actually place it down. There's no guesswork, there's no kind of mucking about, you just get to do it. So in here I'm just going to make a box that's 50 by 25, and I'm going to specify that I like the top left hand corner the most. There's an option here for position at next click, or if you decheck that to type in some coordinates. I'll show you both. Position at next click is what I'm going to do first. Clicking OK, and it looks like I've done nothing. But what I've actually got is this little crosshair, and when I click, it's going to place the top left-hand corner as I specified at that point with a 50 by 25 rectangle. To show you again here, with the position at next click dechecked, I might just make this 0 and 0 so it ends up on our 0 marker. I'm going to choose the center just to mix it up a bit. Hitting OK after I've changed these values again, we'll place that at exactly the center of 0 and 0, as you can see here. There's one more thing about drawing 2D shapes before we run through the rest of them, and that's as you're drawing them, you might have seen these little blue numbers appear in the right bottom corner. These numbers have the change in X and the change in Y, but they can also be accessed as kind of locks to help us out when we're drawing these things. Pressing the Tab key on your keyboard will let you enter these little boxes and put restraints in. So what I'm going to do here, for example, in my X value, I know that the X value of this box is going to be 50. So I'm going to type in 50 and press enter. And you can see it's put this restraining line in, which means I can only draw a box that's 50 wide. But that means that I can still play here in the Y value, which is great for me. I love it. I think it's awesome. If you press Tab a few more times, you'll get extra options here. For example, a length of the line and an angle of the line. It's referencing that little tiny diagonal line that you might be able to see through the rectangle at the moment. Let's say I wanted to restrain that to be 75 long. It means that here, these are the only possible rectangles I can draw that have an X component of 50 and have a diagonal length of 75. If this math's above your head, it's okay, it's alright. We'll just keep moving on and you can draw pretty circles and squares later. Just for those math freaks out there, you can keep pressing Tab and get other options with most of these tools, including position data. Just simply click and you'll confirm your selection. Let's get rid of that and move on through. The rounded rectangle is quite similar, except it only comes with 2 drawing modes, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's okay. It's got the corner to corner, and it's got the 3-point mode, allowing you to draw diagonals, all kinds of angled things. Hasn't got many other additional options apart from the corner style, which can be proportional, unconstrained, or symmetrical. Proportional basically means that it's proportional to the shape size. Unconstrained means you get to put in your own X and Y values, which will round the corner more or less. And symmetrical means that this value is always going to be the same. So if you have a look at this one, for example, and I increase the corner size, it naturally makes it 50 and 50 and rounds the corner out more. Clicking once again the little pencil and spanner up here gives you the options to change these before you place the objects down, which is really handy if you're going to do a lot of them. Getting rid of these, we move on to my second favourite 2D tool, the circle tool.
Circle. No. Circle. Yeah. Circle. Bye.
And mainly because there's so many different options to learn about this. I'm going to run through them all quickly again. If you need to, you can watch it back. Starting with the first one, it's center out mode. Pretty self-explanatory, starting from the center, drawing out. Remembering, once again, you can press Tab and set a length. For example, if I want to make a 50mm radius circle, I can do this, and all of a sudden I've got a 50mm radius circle, diameter of 100. For those of you who might be a little bit math slow, radius is from the center outwards to one side, diameter is the size across. Moving on, we've got the diameter mode, which simply is from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle. 3-point mode is probably my favourite circle drawing mode, and I know that sounds really lame, and I don't go out much on Saturday nights, and I'm sorry. Drawing this way means that it has to pass through all 3 points. So as you can see here, I've drawn 1 point, 2 points, and it's not until I start the 3rd point that it links the circle up. As you can see in this instance, it has to go through all 3 points, so there's only one possible circle this can make. I'm going to try and give you an example of using 3-point circle mode in a handy environment. I'm just going to place down 3 boxes at random. This box here, and this box here. And I would like a circle that passes through this point, and this point to join all 3 of these stages, for example. Grabbing my circle tool, on 3-point mode, all I do is click, click, and click, and Vectorworks finds a circle that fits within those 3 points. That's when this becomes really handy. Getting rid of those couple of circles that we've got there, and going back to the circle mode here. Circle by tangent or 3-line mode. It's very similar to this mode here, and it's really hard for me to show it to you, but I'm going to try. Placing one of these down, placing 2 of these down, placing a third one of these down here. So now I've got 3 rectangles creating a bounding box for me. Jumping back on here, I'm going to select this mode. I'm going to choose this face here as my first object, this face here is my second object, and this is my third face. And you can see it's going to give me this. It says that from these 3 faces, this is the largest circle you could possibly put inside here. There's a couple other options here as an extension line modes. You can see it's pinning out to those different spots, and so I should be able to get 4 different circles that I could make from this. It's really fun, so I suggest you pause the video right now and have a little go at making some of these, because they're awesome. Continuing on with our circle work, just going to get rid of these and go through the last 2. We have circle from a weird one, outside point to inner center, which is a little bit kind of messes with your head because you really should be going the other way. There might be a use for it, I'm not really sure. I'd probably just use diameter mode. And the last one is tangent and center mode, which essentially defines a tangential line and then a circle out from there. It's not really commonly used. You might be able to find something for it in kind of landscaping environments where you want to specify a distance out and then draw a circle without having to draw anything else, but normally you just draw a rectangle or a line to indicate your kind of general direction. So we're just going to leave it there. All of these circles have some other functions. The Control X and Control Y is actually standing for center and center, which means the X and Y value for the center of this circle is 108 across and 8 up. That's pretty much it. Radius and diameter should obviously be linked. So in this case here I can see that it's got a diameter of 75, and yet half of 75 should actually be 37.5. Because of our unit roundings that we set earlier in this lesson, we said that it had to be to the nearest 1 millimeter. So it's rounded up in this case and given us 38. That's how I know it's actually 75 in the diameter. You could obviously change that, and that would say 37.5 if you rounded it out and got the exact number. If you type into one of these, for example if I type 30, it should obviously change the diameter to be 60, double that value. Sweep's the last one here. Sweep is essentially how far around the circle do I go. This little blue marker here indicates the start of our circle. Obviously it doesn't make sense because the circle just goes round infinitely, but that's the real kind of semi-start. If I change the sweep here to be 180, it should only go halfway around the circle, thus being a semicircle, or as Vectorworks sees as an arc. It's an arc because it's not completed, it's just part of a circle. It's a little bit of a difference. We'll come back to that later on. Getting rid of that, that's the circles done. The circle's deformed brother is right here. It's the oval tool. Extremely unappreciated, never used. That's kind of it. It draws exactly the same as the rounded rectangle in where it has 2 modes, diagonal corner to diagonal corner, and also the diagonal line and then outwards from there. Same properties as the rounded rectangle except without the corner fun, so no one ever really touches it. Here is the arc mode, and obviously you could just use a circle to create an arc, but there's so many different ways of drawing arcs that we have to discuss them. I can't demonstrate all of them to you now because some of them require other components, so I'm just going to jump through the first 4 and you'll have to explore the rest yourself. The first one's really kind of simple. It's just radius mode, which is essentially draw an extension out and then draw the shape of the arc. To show you that again, it's specify the center, draw the length of the arc, and then how much of the arc you want. You can see I'm sweeping around, and you can go all the way around until you get to almost a full circle. Vectorworks shouldn't actually ever let you do a full circle, because otherwise you'd just be using the circle tool. There you go, I've just made Pac-Man. Deleting all of that, and jumping onto the second one, which is 3-point mode. Much like the 3-point mode of the circle, draw 3 points and the arc will go through those points. You can see I've drawn 2 that it's constrained by at the moment, and I'm flexible here on my third one, being able to choose the arc that it has to pass through. Clicking again, finalize, reverse Pac-Man. Here on the third mode, it's kind of easy. It's 2 points and then a height. You can see I'm just creating the curve here. It's much like the pass-through mode, but it follows a mathematical formula to generate this arc here. It follows Bezier curves, which I won't explain to you now. They're just pretty patterns that you don't really have to worry about. I'll probably put a little animation in the bottom right hand corner, either now or when you draw lines. The last mode right here is the two arcs outside points and then a center mode. So drawing 2 points and then setting a center point. And as you can see here, as I vary the center point, the arc changes. Once again, with all of these, I suggest you pause the video, have a play, spend 2 or 3 minutes just mucking about with arcs, and then get back to work and find a use for them later on down the track if you need them. All of them have a lot of properties here. It's all very straightforward, a lot of the same things we've discussed, and then a couple of things like starting sweeps, ending sweeps, endpoints, the arc length itself, and chord lengths, which I can't explain to you now, but you'll just have to play with them. There's a tool here that I don't think actually belongs in Vectorworks. It's called the freehand tool. If you ever have to use the freehand tool, you're doing something wrong. The only time I can ever feasibly see you do it is writing your signature with a stylus, because apart from that you should never need to use the freehand tool. To explain it to you, it's a line that you draw. It shouldn't be in a technical package. I don't know why it is. Now we come to some of my favourite things. Polylines and polygons. Polylines and polygons is something that we've debated about in previous classes for a long time, and the difference between the two isn't much at all. I don't actually know why the Polygon tool still exists. There are some minute things about meshing, but that's kind of it. We're going to focus on the Polyline tool, and then there's going to be an exercise straight after this that you guys are going to follow. Going through polylines now, there's 6 different modes that you get to choose from. We'll only really discuss the first 5. The 6th one you'll never use. Starting straight off, it's corner to corner vertex mode, which is basically straight line drawing with clicks. Click, 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 click. Get the picture? Straight lines at every point you click through. Over here, we've seen the first bit of our polyline stuff. Right when I get to the end, I'm going to discuss what this middle section does, but just follow along with the different types for now. So that's type 1. Type 2 here is Bezier curves, and I said I'd talk about Bezier curves. You ready for this? I'm going to draw this box right here. That's where it's going to go. Ciao! While I'm continuing, you can keep watching Bezier curves in that corner down there. What we're going to do is draw a Bezier curve now, and as you can see, it follows this kind of pattern. Flow through the points, but following maths. You can see it doesn't actually, except for the first one, pass through any of my points. It just kind of meanders towards them, and that's because it's following math. And when I close this thing here, it's actually going to round out. So none of those points are actually what I wanted it to follow. It's just approximating and becoming pretty according to maths. The cubic vertex mode is the pass-through circle mode that we've seen so far with the circles and also with arcs. 1, 2, 3. You must pass through all 3 points. And it continues like that. Must pass through all the points. All the way through until you get to the end. This one's really handy. Keep your eyes on it. Here we've got a tangent arc mode, which is quite similar to one of the other arc modes we discussed. It just continues the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3. You can see it bases the next arc on the previous arcs, just flowing through and creating a radial mode. Have some fun drawing these lines, and then follow the exercise afterwards. The last mode here is the point arc mode, and this one is particularly handy for lighting designers, when you're linking your lights together and bouncing from light objects one to the other. So for example, here I'm just going to mock up a couple of quick lights. There, that's a beautiful lighting design. Grabbing this, I'm just going to link these lights together really easily. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Double clicking at the end, finalizing, and then obviously I wouldn't want to fill on that, but I'm going to leave it for now. As you can see, you could just put tag numbers out the end of that. You could train these all to the same value, and it'd look really neat and really good for your documentational purposes. You can also just create some cool shapes out of this. Briefly moving away from our polylines temporarily, I just wanted to add a few more notes about some of the flexibility and options that you have when drawing your polylines and polygons. So I'm just going to move here across to the other side of the page and start with a new polyline. We can just keep it on the straight edge mode for the time being. Starting out here with a straight polyline, I'm just going to draw a few points on the page. If all of a sudden I've made a mistake and would like to go back one point within my polyline, I can just press the backspace key, which will take me back one point in the direction that I was travelling. Now I can recorrect myself and continue on my merry way without having to delete all the points that I was working on. With a polyline, you can close the object by coming back to the point that you were at before, thus making this a closed polyline and technically a polygon. Another handy thing to know is that you can edit these points afterwards. Normally we'd probably discuss this a bit later on, but seeing as your exercise coming up is related to polylines and polygons, I can show it to you now. By clicking this here, which is called the Reshape tool, you're actually allowed to play with all the points that exist on this polyline, allowing you to grab them and move them. In addition to this, you can also use the plus and the minus button to add a point or delete a point. I'll give you an example now. By clicking the Add Vertex mode, I could click in between these two here and add another vertex in the direction of travel. Conversely, I can click the minus button and delete a point. As you're using the Polyline tool, you might want to switch between options while you're using them. For example, I've started out drawing a straight line shape here, but I would all of a sudden like to switch and do a different curve style, say number 3. You can either click on the individual curve style up here and change midway through your drawing, or alternatively press the U key to toggle between them on the fly. You should now be fully equipped to go on with the task ahead. Take 15 minutes and try and do as many of these exercises as you can. Good luck! This exercise comes in 3 parts: a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. What I suggest you do is pause the video on the one that you would like to have an attempt at, and then give it a go. This is the beginner level, the intermediate level, and the advanced challenge. As with all of these challenges, I will also attempt all 3 of these and any other exercises that we go through in future lessons. Normally, I'll put the solution video either before or directly after the next week's video. Now that you've had a chance to break things up and play with lines for a little while, we're going to go back to the basic tool set and see what's going on there. Just going to select all of these and delete them for the time being. I'm going to jump straight over the Polygon Tool and the double line Polygon Tool, and we might come back to discuss them later on when we get to 3D and why you might use them. Moving on to the regular Polygon Tool. This is a handy feature to know that it's there, although you mightn't actually find a use for it later on when you're developing things as a designer. It's got 3 drawing modes up the top here. It works similar to a circle for the first 2, and then the third one's something we haven't yet seen. The first mode draws from the center to an outward point. The second draws from the center to the flat side. And the third mode here draws the length of one side. The important thing to note up here is the number of sides option. Obviously we're creating hexagons at the moment. You could put 5 sides in and create a pentagon. Or you can go right up to an extreme. You can make anything really. A hexagon, octagon, decagon, pentadecagon, isogon, up to you entirely. Just so you know, an isogon is a 20-sided shape. And if you're making the 50-cent piece, which is actually a henadecagon, which is an 11-sided shape, kind of a rare one, you can do that as well. There you go. Get one out of your pocket and find out. That's about all you really need to know about the regular Polygon tool. You can change the vertexes here, and you can make it an open or closed shape, depending on what you're feeling. There's a lot of miscellaneous tools from this point on. They kind of get a bit rough, but we'll go through them anyway. The spiral tool. I have never used this in an actual environment before. It's there for looks. That's all it is. There's the spiral. You don't actually get to do anything, you just get to set how many turns it does, what it looks like. That's about it. There's no magic to it, that's it. The next one in the sequence is the eyedropper tool. We're going to skip over this mainly due to it being related to attributes. The magic wand tool, or as it's actually called here is the select similar tool, is used to select like-kinded things. Up here you've got a couple of different options, but mainly we just want to click this pencil and spanner up here to find out what other settings are available to us. As you can see here, there's a lot of select similar options. Everything from how it's filled, the pen attributes, what kind of text it might be, walls when we get up to them, and a lot of other options here. Mainly the things that you want to be looking at is kind of object type, perhaps a size, its opacity or how see-through it is, its layer or class when we get up to it, and various other different things in here. So for example, I'm going to leave it on object type and see which ones we can select out of this. We should be able to select all of these because they're all polygons in one go. So just by clicking on one of them, you can see I select the whole group. Written up here, 6 polygons. Whereas if I clicked on the spiral, there's only one of those, so it'll only detect the one spiral. This is great if you need to select a whole heap of fixtures, or if you need to get a whole heap of chairs, for example in your seating bank, all in one go. The eye, or the information tool, is here to turn things on and turn things off again. We're going to come back and discuss this when we go into layers and when we go into classes, because that's where it really shines through, and there's a lot of scripts that you can download that have improved upon this over time. Attribute mapping is mainly to do with textures. We're going to leave that until lesson 5 and lesson 6 when you really get into textures and have a lot of fun. As I've discussed before, there is the reshape tool. Here you can see if I select any of these shapes, I can grab any of their vertices and have a play with them. This is still on the negative mode from before, but if I put on the move mode I can easily grab this and deform this shape in any way I would like. This is a great way that you can start out with a basic shape that you might see quite similar to something you want to make, and grabbing a point to alter it in a way that might be useful. These two functions coming up, the rotate and the mirror tool, are essential to some of the things coming up that you're going to have to do in Vectorworks, particularly in the exercises that we'll run over the next couple of lessons. Let me show you how they work using one of these things that we've got remaining on our screen. I'm going to grab this object here, and I'm going to use the rotate tool. Basically it has two functions here, and I got a handy little protractor in my Vectorworks 2013, which you mightn't have in your Vectorworks 2012. It doesn't matter, it works exactly the same. Basically you can either have the standard mode, which is just simply rotate, or rotate and copy, two birds with one stone. Here I'm just going to select a point, say the pointy end of this, draw a line outwards, and then use that as a counter lever to rotate this shape. You can see here next to my cursor I get a little box telling me what angle I'm currently on, starting off at 0 degrees, which is out here to the right hand side, and working my way down I go into negative numbers, or upwards into positive numbers. Once you've chosen an angle that you would like to go to, say 45 degrees here, simply left click again and it will set the angle of this object. The duplicate mode can be used as well. Just similarly draw an extension line after clicking once, rotate the object, and when you click again you'll have a duplicate copy. Just remember when rotating objects that it doesn't matter where you click. You can click actually off the object, draw an extension line, and find yourself rotating from that point, yet moving the object in a similar direction. We're going to move right along onto the mirror tool. Here I've already got my object selected. The mirror tool is great for making patterns or doing repetitive tasks that you need to constantly flip objects for in various manners. Two functions once again, a simple mirror mode where the object isn't duplicated, and a second one where the object is duplicated. I'm going to just demonstrate the first one here, and you have to imagine that you are drawing a pane or a mirror in between this object. This line that I've drawn down here by clicking once and clicking a second time down here in a moment will flip the selected object or objects across it. So if you watch now, just like a pane of glass in a mirror, it will flip the object to the other side. Here I can show it even better with the duplicate mode enabled. So I'm going to draw the line and flip that object across the line. If I select both these objects again, I can demonstrate that once more with the duplicate mode, drawing in this axis this time, and flipping them across. You can also flip on any other axes that you choose. It doesn't have to be a perpendicular one to the grid lines. And by doing this, you can all of a sudden see you end up with quite sporadic shapes. We'll now just move through the rest of these tools quickly until we get to the end one, which is one of my favourite ones. Just grabbing all of these, and I'm hitting the delete key. I'm now just going to draw a line and a box for demonstration purposes, the next tool, which is called the split tool. It's got three different functions here. The first is point split mode. I've drawn this line here to indicate how point split mode works, which is where you've got a single line or path and you just put a break in it by clicking, and all of a sudden this line here is now actually two lines just by putting a point split in it. Here where I've got my box, I can demonstrate the other two functions. The first is line split and the second is line discard, as I like to call it, or line trim mode. With the line split mode, you can just draw a line between an object and literally cut it into pieces. So here, if I grab one of these pieces, you can see it's now separated along the line that I cut before. This line split trim mode here does a similar thing but discards part of the object. So after the second click you get to choose which way you'd like to discard. In this case I've decided to keep this corner and discard the rest. So once again, 1, 2, and then choose the section you'd like to keep. The arrow pointing downwards means I'm keeping this bottom section here. And there we go. Moving right along, we come to the Connect Combine tool. This is a really rarely used tool because there's a lot of other functions that can do it similar or better. I'm just going to draw a few examples here of some various intersecting lines. I'm only really going to explore the first three options here. The first one is the singular object T command, which basically here I can demonstrate this line here has overshot this other line that I've intersected. To make this back into a T shape, I simply click on one of the lines and then the other, and you can see it slices off the excess in accordance to this line. Similarly with the corner mode, you can see here where I've got two lines that meet, but their corner is shot off in the opposite direction. By clicking on the two lines, it reforms that corner there together. But make note that it doesn't actually add the lines together at all, they're still separate entities. The third option is a combine of sorts. It actually pairs these two objects, in this example, together to make a surface. You won't find a lot of uses for it, and if you do, make sure you let me know. The trim tool is another similar tool to some of these other previous slicing and connecting tools we've discussed. I'll see if we can find an example later on to use it in. The fillet and the bevel tool are slightly different from each other, but equally as powerful. Here I'm going to demonstrate the fillet tool to you. Essentially you get to set a radius for it, and then choose one of the three cutting modes. Just straight off the bat we're going to choose 25 here, and choose this corner here. You can see it's made a fillet into this corner, or a cut into the corner if you like. It hasn't actually applied this to it, it's just created it from the object that we had previously. Demonstrating the second mode here, it's actually going to cut into the object and give us that subtraction with the remaining previous lines that should exist there. In the third mode, it actually gets rid of those lines and just applies the transformation. Similarly here we have three modes for the chamfer tool. To apply this, it's just essentially a straight edge cutoff. In the first instance here we can choose two lines and it just applies a one line demonstrating the path that it should follow. In the second instance it will apply the cut but also leave us with the remaining outside pieces. In the third functionality it disregards the pieces and just applies the cut. The offset tool is a strange and unappreciated tool within Vectorworks. Once you've selected an object and click the offset tool, you get two different modes and two different boundary settings. The first mode is by distance, the second is by point mode. Just to explain that, there's a distance here of 20 millimeters. Once I've got this object selected, I can then select a side from which to offset. For example, this bottom side here, seeing as this is an equal-sided shape, and by clicking in there, it will offset all of the margins by 20 millimeters. Similarly, here is a better indication. I can use the offset by point mode by grabbing one of these sides and increasing everything exponentially. It's much like growing, but when you have complex shapes, it can be quite handy to expand evenly around all edges. You'll just have to have a play with it and get used to it. The clip tool works like this. It's simply a slice tool except with rectangles. There's various functionality here, and you can do different mode types. For example, inclusion mode only keeps what's within the boundary box. You could choose to keep both objects except cut through everything, or you could choose to simply exclude all objects within the selected area. Once again, you have the three selection modes: rectangle, polygon mode, and circle mode. There is another function which we will play with much later on in this lesson, which does a very similar thing, so hang around and we'll get into that. We've finally made it to the last tool, which is personally one of my favorites. It's called the Offset and Distribute tool. It's called Move by Points, or as I like to think of it, the Duplicate and Offset tool. Here I've just drawn a simple box. By clicking on this, I get three different options. One is Move mode, one is Distribute mode, and one is Reference Point mode. Ignore this one here and just focus on these two. There's an important thing here called number of duplicates, and also a pencil and spanner. Let's click on the pencil and spanner first. This brings up the number of duplicates options, as well as two checkboxes. One is for retain, and one is for leave selected. Basically what this is asking us is how many copies of this would we like. Let's say we'd like this one plus 5 more. So we want 5 duplicates of this one, but we also want to keep the original, so let's tick the retain box. I don't really care if it's selected or not at this point in time, so let's give that a go. The difference between these two modes really shines now. In the move mode, you get to set the distance between the two objects. So by clicking once, and then a second time, you're choosing the spacing between each object. So in this direction of travel, let's say it's 67 millimeters, it repeats that interval from here to here. Once again, here to here, here to here, here to here, until you get the desired amount. If we were to do this once again with a similar rectangle, but this time put it on the distribute mode, what you should see, if I draw this lengthy line here, it should distribute our 5 additional duplicates in this line. There you go. Once again, that was from the starting point here to the starting point of the last unit. Both of these are obviously very valuable and can be used a lot later on. Congratulations, we've made it through the basic toolset. We've got 2 more things that we need to discuss, and then it's on to exercise time for the rest of this. I'm going to delete all of these, and we're going to talk about the move command. Here I've just drawn 2 rectangles next to each other. I'm going to use one as a reference, and then I'm going to use the move command to move this one around similarly. You can find this here from the modify menu, under move, and then the regular move. Control M for me, or probably Command M for you guys, or Apple M for you guys in fact. I'm going to use the shortcut key here of Control M. Brings up this. Essentially move is just slightly different from the X and Y coordinate system. The move command moves something from its current position in a direction. It doesn't actually relate to the grid around it, it just moves it up or down, or left and right. So in this example here, my box is currently 101 wide. I'm going to move it about 50 across. A positive change in X will make it move to the right. At the same time, I'm also going to make it move down. Let's say 20 millimeters. And that's got to be in the negative direction to move down. Hitting OK, we should see this move to the right 50 millimeters and down 20 millimeters. There we go. If I was to place a box in here, we should find that the size of the box is in fact 20 millimeters high. This is going to become really important later on for you guys, particularly in a task that's about to happen for you. So pay attention to that, go back and watch it again if you need to, and make good use of the move command. The last little section that I want to show you is 3 functions that some of you might have touched on already. I'm now going to copy and paste this object 2 more times. The first time I'm just going to go copy from the copy menu, from the edit menu, and then paste. As you can see, it's just plonked it on the page here, and I can now drag it around. You can use the shortcut keys of Ctrl X, C and V, just the same as Microsoft Word or any other packages that you might be using for cut, copy and paste, as they're listed here. Ctrl X, Ctrl C, Ctrl V for me, or Apple X, Apple C, Apple V for those of you on a Mac. There's another option here called Paste in Place. This option here remembers where the initial object was copied from and then pastes it back into that location again. So clicking it, you can see it's highlighted objects here. It doesn't actually look as though anything's happened though. When I move this away, you'll notice that it actually placed it exactly on top of where the original was. We're now going to run 3 different processes across our groups of objects here. I'm going to select the first 2 and right click on them. From this menu I'm going to choose Add Surface. What you'll notice will happen is that 2 objects actually meld together to become one composed polyline. They now move together and can't be separated. Similarly, we can do another thing here. We can right click on 2 selected objects and choose Clip Surface. This works much like a cookie cutter, taking whatever object's on top and slicing it through the underneath objects. You can do this with multiple objects as well, which is something that you should probably note for future exercises. If you have multiple objects on top of each other and select a batch group, they should all cut through each other. In this example here, this top object has cut all the way through the bottom. The second topmost object has cut through also, and the third most top object has cut through the very bottom layer, leaving us with a series of donuts.
Donuts.
The last of these 3 principles is the intersection of objects. Choosing intersect, you'll notice that it gives us the slice of pie that was shared between this object and this object. Once again, it can be done with multiple objects all at once. All of these functions can be accessed via the Modify menu and going down to Add Surface, Clip Surface, or Intersect Surface. You now know everything that you probably need to continue with the next 2 exercises. Should you get stuck at any point in time, feel free to contact me. Your first warm-up challenge is to recreate this tessellating shape. You should now have the skills using mirror, copy, duplicating tools, and the various 2D shapes you already know to be able to achieve this. The second challenge that you have to undertake is to recreate this image. Try and make sure that you keep it either to scale or very symmetrically square. This concludes Lesson 1A for Vectorworks 2013 2A. I look forward to seeing you for the next lesson in a week's time. Good luck!